Good morning, everybody. Orange A here with another Etheria Restart video, and today we're going to talk about early game shell farming in Etheria Restart. Which shells are worth leveling, which shells are worth keeping, where are you going to get some value in these early shell dungeons before you unlock that red tier, that last tier of shells. Now that red tier unlocks at Nico Nana. So for the sake of this video, we are focused on everything from Jacques, who's the first dungeon, up through Whitney. What here is worth spending a little bit of your energy on, what's worth leveling up, and what will essentially help your account get to the point where you are farming good enough gear and have good enough shells that you can begin to farm Nico Nana and beyond, because these fights get pretty dang hard. And I want to mention before we go any further, this red tier, this top tier of shell, once you can start farming these, I think no matter what I say about these early game farms, you immediately do start farming these because they are so much better, but that's a video for a different day. We need to get there first. So let's go fight by fight. Let's talk about what's worth keeping and for who to put it on, and then I'll give you an example of how experience on shells kind of works in this game. Okay, let's start with Jacques here. Jacques, I don't know, the French guy. Look, Jacques normal doesn't really drop very much. In fact, it's just the blue level stuff is kind of garbage. But Jacques hard actually has a pretty good prize in there, and that's Agent Lizard. Agent Lizard is really good. I don't know how to say this. You're going to have a lot of fights in this game, like Terramaton, where you are trying to kill one target. Agent Lizard is great to slap on a DPS because before that DPS owner takes action, it will select the enemy with the lowest HP percentage. So that could be a little bit tricky. You need to make sure what you're trying to kill is currently the most dead, but it'll deal a big chunk of damage to them and increase their next instance of damage taken by 15%. Not only that, Agent Lizard comes with Swift Rush and Onslaught as its matrix availabilities, which are perfect for the early game. You are going to be building around Matrix and Onslaught almost exclusively in the early game. So Agent Lizard is somebody that if you're farming a few rounds of Jacques for those those early missions, what the heck are they called again? Those early hyperlink charter missions, start leveling yourself up in Agent Lizard, at least to a point. And I'll talk about that point here in a minute. That's really the only drop from Jacques that I'm interested in keeping. Okay, Shadowrunner's up next. If we go to Shadowrunner hard, this is where the next great shell that drops is. And I'm not using that word incorrectly. There is a great shell that drops from Shadowrunner hard, and it's Unbridled Science. Look, there's a lot of characters in this game that you might just want to have take more turns. In fact, all of your characters in this game taking more turns is a good thing. Unbridled Science just does one thing. Every 4 turns, every time you take action, your turn meter goes up by 30%. Boom. You just skip 30% of your next turn meter once every 4 turns. It's excellent, and it's generically really excellent. The only drawback to this shell, and the thing that'll keep you from putting it on your DPS characters as well, is that the matrices are Swift Rush and Unbreakable. Now, Swift Rush, you're going to be running on so many characters that you will get a lot of use out of Unbridled Science. So this is somebody you can invest into early, throw it on your healers, throw it on your buffers, throw it on your, time mage, the people manipulating the time bar at the bottom. I don't know why I wanted to call them time mages. Got a little Final Fantasy Tactics on my brain, but throw them on all your people that aren't your DPS characters, and you will be happy with that. Especially if you can land yourself a nice Swift Rush set right here with 2 Swift Rush on it or something like that. So Unbridled Science is the Shadowrunner prize. You can only get it on the hard mode, so I wouldn't really throw any runs into Shadowrunner to complete any missions or something like that until you can clear Shadowrunner hard, at which case get yourself some Unbridled Sciences and don't feel bad about leveling that up. Again, more on leveling up towards the end of the video. Okay, Apate. I think I'm saying that right. Apate. Let's look at Apate normal and hard. Once again, the prize here is hidden on the hard mode. Hard mode has Budo Panda, and Budo Panda is the next really good DPS shell. So we started with Agent Lizard. You're gonna maybe farm that enough to get kind of one built up Agent Lizard. hopefully by the time you're done with that, you're ready to start farming yourself a Budo Panda. What this does is after the owner takes action, follow up on the main target, dealing 2 hits of 25% plus 1,000 damage. On a critical hit, increase the owner animus's crit damage by 4% up to 6 stacks. Once again, very good matrices on this, especially for your DPS characters with that onslaught, or if you're starting to get some harvest gear and you want to complete like a 4-piece there, or maybe you want to complete an 8-piece, fine. You can use that for those. It also has Swift Rush on it if you wanted to put it on a character running Swift Rush, but because this is scaling with the attack of your character, it's really better for a DPS character, not a support. Again, what's this going to do? It's going to help you burn through a single target. So again, killing Terrormaton's right hand before you then kill Terrormaton's main body on some of these boss fights, just burning down the boss. These shells that just give you targeted direct single target damage are very, very valuable, and Budo Panda is somebody you can invest into a little bit and then get a lot of use out of that shell. Even when you get to the late stages of this game and you are farming some of those like mythic tier, those red drops, you're gonna play game modes where you need to use a lot of characters, and especially in the early late game, you're not gonna have a lot of fully leveled up red tier shells because they're just so dang expensive to level up, whereas these guys are cheaper to level up early, and if you have them on the back burner and you need to expand your roster a little bit, boom, pull one off the bench and put it on your team. Budo Panda is the prize from Apate here. Tamani Dojo I would avoid, and White Gale. White Gale is kind of in that same vein. Like before the owner takes action, 2 hits of damage to the target with the highest attack and extends the control duration on them. The problem here is, or considers the non-control debuffs on them, but also not dots. And I don't love the matrices for White Gale. That's my biggest problem with White Gales. It doesn't have those like DPS matrices on it, so I prefer Budo Panda from Apate there. Okay, next up is Kururu. Kururu's kind of bad. Like, you just kill this one and move on with your life, in my opinion. This one, I don't love Star. I tried to kind of force this one in the beta a little bit, especially with my characters that had like, I really only wanted them for like skill 3 and it maybe had a 5-turn cooldown. It didn't really show me a lot of value. I didn't love it. The healing up ones, I have found more use for my healers with the turret accelerating ones over the healing boosting ones, because the cooldown on it is 4 turns. So say this guy like pops his cooldown, then your healer doesn't use a healing skill, then it's just awkward to try and time it. So I don't love the healer ones that much, especially in this early game. And then Mermaid Princess. Look, if you're like really into day 1 or 2 getting to the top of the PvP leaderboard and you find your team getting crowd controlled to death and then bursted, and you have like an opener who can purify your team or something, Mermaid Princess, there you go. She will purify your debuffs, so you could use her in that like kind of niche situation. But overall, I would not waste my energy farming Kururu. I'm even saying it right, it just sounds weird. I think he's a skip on the early game farming stage. You got to kill him so you can move on, but I'd skip him. Okay, now this is like, I'm going to call this the early mid game or the mid game of shell farming, whatever you want to say. Phoebe. Oh baby, Phoebe has some good drops on her. The hard mode and the nightmare mode both have the good drops. We are talking about Twilight Night and Black Flag. On my beta account, I had a fully built Twilight Knight and a fully built Black Flag. And at that point, I was able to kind of start farming Nico Nana, but I mean fully built, like I took them all the way up. Twilight Knight is insane. One of the best DPS shells in the early and mid game, and you will use it into the early late game as well. So before the owner takes action, 170% damage to the enemy with the lowest HP percentage. So again, you have to be a little careful here. You want to make sure whoever you're trying to burst, they are already a little bit lower than everybody else. But then after he does that, he lowers their defense by an additional 50% this turn. So sets them up to die. So on Terramaton, if you're trying to kill that right arm on the first turn, give it this defense debuff. Just have whoever you're going to hit pop this first, because this triggers before the owner takes action. There's a world where you could even throw this on a support character running like Swift Rush or something like that. Now, I preferred all my DPS characters because it has the nice DPS matrices on it. And since it goes before they go, they get the defense, they get to take advantage of that defense break. Also, Black Flag is another just insanely good support shell. After the unit takes action, perform a follow-up attack on the target, dealing 120% damage, and applies a 2-turn speed buff to your Animus and increases their turn meter by 12%. So you're getting that turn meter boost, you're getting the speed buff, which makes this guy good not only on your damage characters, but also on your support characters. The drawback for Black Flag, in my opinion, is that his matrices don't have a lot of like really good DPS. Like there's no onslaught on there or anything like that. But Swift Rush is going to be so universally used that most of your characters in this game wouldn't mind a couple more Swift Rush matrix on there. Bramble is now becoming a thing in the game, and Bramble sets are really impactful, so you can put him on a character running Bramble or Wellspring. A lot of characters in this game will find a few stacks of Wellspring to get their HP up. Black Flag's your guy. So I really like Black Flag. My favorite one from this is Twilight Knight. Black Flag is my second favorite. Now, Diamond Heart is an interesting one. I got a little bit of use out of Diamond Heart. I farmed Phoebe a lot. Like, I hardcore farmed this fight. Phoebe is before the owner takes action, increase their defense by 550. There are many characters in this game that scale off of defense and apply a 2-turn shield equal to 300% of their defense to not only themselves, but the ally with the lowest HP percentage. This will add some much needed survivability to your teams as you're trying to push into the harder fights in this game. You don't want to get one shot. This will really help with that. And on a defense scaling character, I really like Diamond Heart. Now, the purple shells that drop from here are kind of worthless. You could just start selling them off at this point for more of the training data, but Phoebe is a great farm in that like mid game for some shells. Now, Whitney's up next. Look, I didn't farm Whitney much. Whitney's a hard fight. Whitney is a fight that I beat on manual on my last beta playthrough just so I could then start farming Nico Nana. But I think you have to be account level 40 before you can even start farming Nico Nana. So I would just, for the early game, and we can look at Whitney's shells a little bit, but for the early game, I would focus my late early to early mid, that's what I was trying to say, on Febian or Phoebe. I think this is where you're gonna get the most value. And then I would just clear Whitney because I wouldn't throw a bunch of resources into Whitney because the next thing you get is the beginning of like in-game shell farming with Nico Nana, Sharon, Hoyin, and Rengakutsu. And Nico Nana, you're gonna drop a bunch of energy on her. So I just sort of skip over farming Whitney, focus on Febian, and then I kind of told you who I'd use to build up to that. Now, I wanna point out a couple other things in this video. People are really worried about investing into their shells. Let's go shells here. Let's sort by rarity, but the other way, boom. Here's the deal with shells. With many of them, and I mentioned this earlier, especially your Twilight Knights of the world, you're going to hit parts in this game where you need maybe 3 teams of 3 different elements, and you might only have, even in the late game, a few of these red shells maxed out. It's so handy to have your secondary team be able to go back and find like a built-up Twilight Knight to equip. Also, the earlier, the less rare your shells are, the cheaper they are to level up. So let's look at a Agent Lizard right here, or a Budo Panda. Let's look at Agent Lizard. So we're gonna go to this guy and level him up a little bit. I'm gonna go to upgrade. You can see it costs 600 training data for me to upgrade Agent Lizard. Then it goes to 750, 900. It keeps going up and up and up. As you get to 10, you'll need to consume, and it could just be a level 1 that you consume. You'll need to consume one of them to start going to like level 11. So here we go. We're now level 10, and at level 10, we unlocked our first passive effect. I want to talk now about how far you should take these guys. In my opinion, if you're going to invest into a shell, get them to the second passive. The first passive is nice, a little bit more HP, and you can click this exclamation mark right here, and it will tell you what passives you can get. The passive slot 1s are always the same. The passive slot 2s are always the same. But as the rarity of your shells increases, the rarity of the passives increases. And the more rare the passive that you roll, the better stats you get. So let's keep leveling this guy. If we take him to level 20, which is a nice stopping point if you're just using it as like a holdover, at level 20, to get him there, you'll need to consume 2. So I'm going to eat that one, and I'm going to eat that one. I'm going to ascend him. I'm going to show you something else here in a second too. So now he's level 20. He got his second passive. On the second passive, you can roll, where is it? What's it called? Speed. You could roll speed. I was on the wrong one. Shadow Dash. You want Shadow Dash, man. Like, Shadow Dash is just the most important slot 2 passive if you're just going for, like, generally speaking. It's the one where you can get flat speed. I don't recommend re-rolling passives very much on these early game shells. Like, for your Agent Lizard, is it really worth spending a bunch of your training data to change your passives? Probably not. But what about when we get to, let's filter by rarity, and let's filter by rarity the other way. What about when you get to, oh my gosh, like inventory management? Yeah, isn't inventory management fun, guys? Don't we just love it? Rarity, rarity. What about when you get to the yellow rarity? Let's say this is a Twilight Knight, and I take my Twilight Knight to level 20, level 30, you know, I've taken him all the way up there. At that point, I do think it can be worth re-rolling passives a little bit, but I want to point something out here. If you're re-rolling passives on a purple tier character, like let's go to reconfigured re-roll passives, it only costs the training data. If I go to a higher rarity guy, like let's go back into inventory here, and let's go to one of these like yellow or above shells. I'll just go to an above shell because, you know, inventory management. When you reconfigure them, it costs reconfigure chips. So at the yellow and red rarity, it costs you reconfigure chips to change these passives over. And like, watch this. Let's say you got overclocking in slot 1, or let's say you got something besides Shadow Dash in slot 2, and you really want Shadow Dash, so you reroll. Well, look, that time I got effect accuracy, and it's the purple tier, so it's not even the highest tier. So okay, I'll abandon that and reconfigure again. I got effect resist. I don't want that. I want speed. And I know I already have speed, but hypothetically I don't. I'm just rolling for speed. Like, you can waste a lot of insanely valuable leveling material here trying to get, like, reconfigure early animuses. I would stay away from that until at least the yellow tier on your, like, best yellow tier ones, and really only then if you need that speed to kind of, like, hit the next threshold. Another little tip that I'd like to give. Let me reset the list right here. Let's sort by rarity. Let's sort by rarity ascending. Let's go into Agent Lizard. Say this Agent Lizard has an Onslaught 2 Matrix effect, and I'm running him on a character that wants Onslaught, and I could really use a third Onslaught. What you can do is imprint. So I can take, say I'm farming again. Oh God, okay, come on. Dang it, it reset it again. It's so annoying. Okay, let's sort by rarity. Let's sort by rarity like this. Say I got a better Agent Lizard to drop, one with like 3 Onslaught. Great. We can go in here and we can click the imprint button. You can take the Agent Lizard that you've already leveled to 20, and it will take the passives and the experience and shove them onto the new guy. So the selected shells, star level, and passives will imprint onto the new one. Boom. And so what I just did is I turned my better base Agent Lizard, because he has Onslaught 3, into my old one. I just upgraded it. And so that's a way of saving yourself a little bit of materials in the long run as well. Okay, so TLDR, I recommend, you saw me go through every fight. You saw me give the ones I recommend. Those are my recommendations. Level up to at least level 20 with your early ones to get that second passive. Look for speed. If you get a speed passive, that's really, really good. And then use the imprint function if you need it. I wouldn't mess with reconfiguring much until that yellow tier. And Febian is like, once you can start farming Febian, you'll start ascending. You'll start getting more powerful. And that's what I would farm for farming shells until I can start farming Nico Nana. All right, thank you all for watching. I hope this video was helpful. Kind of long, but I had a lot to say. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.